Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today, I am talking to Robin Staps, the lead guitarist for German progressive metal band The Ocean. We'll be talking about the highly ambitious Phanerozoic double album, we'll be talking about Pelagial, we'll be talking about fossils, nerds, all kinds of fun stuff. So enjoy. Hello, hello?
Hey man, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Right on, sounds good to me, yeah.
Awesome. Hope
How
you
are you
don't...
doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. I just got out of the water in Spain actually, and yeah, it's nice and sunny here. It's perfect.
You're in Spain?
Yes.
Lucky. I'd love to be somewhere other than my apartment. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, that's how I felt exactly. Yeah, the flights have been happening again since the beginning of the month basically, so I took the first chance to get out.
You weren't worried about contracting anything?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean like COVID-19. Like what are the airports like right now?
Well, relatively empty still, but
I
yeah, no, it's like there's tests of temperature with these infrared cameras when you arrive, and there's yeah, not so many people, but obviously everyone is enforcing the masks and everything. But
Mhm.
yeah, it felt pretty safe. I mean, if you're taking cautions, then I guess everything's gonna be all right.
I guess you don't have to worry about bumping into too many people at least if the airports are empty.
Exactly. Yeah, the plane was actually quite full, but the airport itself was pretty empty. It's only starting to pick up again now that people are traveling, and a lot of countries still have restrictions. Spain has been open only since Monday, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, I live in Toronto, Canada myself, and we still have a lot of restrictions on flight. We're not even allowing people from the
Right.
U.S. border, which is only an hour and a half away from me.
Yeah. Well, it's still a lot more serious over there, I believe, or it's just like it struck the U.S. and Canada with a delay as compared to Europe. So you still have like growing infections, and here it's
Oh,
kind of been
absolutely.
declining for the last couple of weeks. So measures have been loosened a little bit. Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear that at least someone is living something similar to a normal life.
Yeah.
How
Right.
I'd like to start off by asking you how have you been handling quarantine? Have you been working on the new album, finishing it up, or was it already completed?
No, it was already completed by the time the whole thing happened. But I have to say, it kind of all came at the right time for us because we would have been knocked out anyways, even if it wasn't for COVID-19, because our bass player has a strange disease on his fingers, so he hasn't been able to touch his instrument the past couple of months.
Oh,
And our singer also had surgery on his right ear, and so basically, if COVID 19 had not happened, then we would have had to cancel a whole bunch of stuff from our end. So it kind of came at the right time, and it also just gave us a lot more time to prepare the album launch properly, and we totally underestimated that. The logistics of it with the box set completion sets, we released a box set along with the first part of the vinyl version on my label Pelagic, and we kind of promised to people that they would be allowed to buy the second album in the corresponding vinyl color to the first one that they bought, and that was logistically quite complicated to make that work. And we also worked on a photo book, a pretty big project, 132 pages photo book of our tours in 2019 that we did.
mm-hmm.
That is coming with the limited versions of the vinyl, and putting all that together just took a lot of time. So we used the downtime of COVID-19 to focus on these projects and a whole bunch of other things as well. A lot of releases with my label, and we started getting into coffee as well. Actually, selling pelagic coffee.
Oh,
So a lot
really?
of projects that I otherwise wouldn't have had the time to look into. So yeah, I've been active and creative, but not really working on music. More like planning the upcoming release and
Mm-hmm.
working on other label-related projects. Yeah.
That's certainly exciting too. I certainly like the idea of an ocean coffee. That sounds interesting.
It's out there. It's called The Great Dying, and we've just put it in the shop last week. We haven't really started promoting it yet because we wanted the focus to be on the album pre-order now, but we're gonna go out with it on social media pretty soon. And it's really cool. It's actually, we've been working together with a coffee roaster from Berlin who really made coffees that reflect the band's music. So we basically gave him songs, and he started making suggestions. And then we started having blind testings. He made coffee for 3 Pelagic bands, and we made a blind testing, and all 7 or 8 people that were there instantly recognized which coffee belonged to what band. So it does really work out. Like there's a coffee for Mono, this Japanese post-rock band that is really elegant and kind of like reverberant, the aroma of it. So it really reflects their music. And the Ocean Coffee is more violent, but also pretty epic and stormy, so to say. So it worked out pretty well, and we'll see how it goes. But it's just a fun project.
That's fascinating. A coffee that tastes like a band. I like that. You guys have always been known for some very creative endeavors and box sets. I mean, I remember with the last album, the box set for that included prehistoric fossils, something I've never seen anywhere before. How did that particular idea come together?
Well, it's obviously related to the album concept. The Phanerozoic double album has this paleontological concept behind it, basically. So it's pretty obvious to think of creatures that lived during those times that we're talking about, and to try to somehow incorporate that into the box sets. But it was logistically really difficult because just sourcing the amount of fossils all from the same time and the same size and weight was immensely difficult. But we had a very nice lady working for a geological institute in Munich that helped us with it and helped us source up to 1,000 trilobites, 350 million years old, one of them, from various trade fairs and providers. It's very difficult to get higher amounts of fossils of the same quality and size and weight. So that was a challenge. But yeah, she helped us a lot, and everybody loved the idea, and it was a great challenge making it work, but it turned out pretty cool.
I never got the box set myself because it sold out so quickly, but I remember seeing pictures of the fossils. They looked beautiful. I'm no paleontologist myself, obviously, but they certainly were beautiful to look at.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we had the green box was limited to 250 copies, and that one had 3 fossils in it, one from the Paleozoic, one from the Mesozoic, an ammonite, a trilobite from the Paleozoic, an ammonite from the Mesozoic, and a petrified fish from the Cenozoic. And ironically, the youngest fossil, the one from the Cenozoic, was the one that was most difficult to find in such high quantities. So that one we had to wait to get restocked for that for quite a while. The trilobites were easier to find somehow. They're all from Morocco. And then the brown box sets, limited to 750 copies, they came with one fossil. We kind of let people pick between like 5 or 6 different ones. Also the trilobites, there was a Mosasaurus tooth that they could choose, and different types of ammonites and Cleonitzeras. And yeah, so we had like 5 or 6 different types of fossils that people could basically choose from.
Will you be offering something similar for the next album? Or are you by chance? I haven't noticed myself.
Well, the deal is that the box set is meant to be for both Phanerozoic 1 and Phanerozoic 2, so all the records fit into it. That's what I mentioned earlier when I said that we offered people to buy the second album.
Can you hear me?
Hey, yes, I can.
Very sorry about that. I'm not really sure what happened there.
Oh, all right, no worries. I can hear you fine.
So sorry, you were saying about the people who bought the previous the box set would be able to get both vinyl copies, correct?
Exactly. Both albums, both Phanerozoic 1 and 2, are meant to fit into the same box. So we didn't release a new box for Phanerozoic 2, as it's part of the one that we already released with the first part. But we did release the album in corresponding artwork, corresponding vinyl colors. So yeah, people who bought the box, they just can buy the second part of the record now and put it into the box that they already have. That's the deal. And we did have a couple of leftover copies because we got a small over delivery. Actually, we got a little more than 1,000 copies initially, so we put another 100 boxes on sale. I believe there are still some 20 or 30 left in the shop right now, but they're close to sell out again.
Okay, I might have to jump on that the moment this interview is done then.
Yeah, so now you can get the complete box set with the brown version with both records, vocal and both instrumental versions, and the fossils and the engraved slate rock plate and everything that came with it. But not many left.
Well, I'm gonna make sure I'm on that then. Literally the moment this interview is done. In fact, you know what?
Right on.
I may open a tab right now just to make sure I can see it.
Yeah, check it out. It's there.
A lot of bands as of late, namely Lamb of God, Carcass, Enslaved, Haken, have had to delay new albums because of COVID-19 and political unrest. Was this ever an option for Phanerozoic 2, especially considering some health problems, as you noted earlier?
Oh yeah, of course. We have debated it for a long time with everyone involved, with Metal Blade, with our booking agents, and among ourselves in the band as well. And of course, there was doubt whether we should release at such a time or postpone the release. Of course, there is the tendency once you have a record done, you kind of just want it out, you know. So this is usually pretty strong, but we were ready to postpone it and wait for a bit. But in the end, we decided to release it now for a number of reasons. The most important reason is that I think the record is ready. People want to hear it, and everyone is sitting bored at home now and hungry for music. So it's not a bad time to release a record, I think, because you get more attention than you would usually get, and also because a lot of other releases have been postponed. The schedule of the early fall is less busy than it would usually be, so this is generally good. You know, there's more attention if you release them. Although, of course, not being able to instantly tour around the release is odd. It's uncommon, but I kind of like it that way. I kind of like people to absorb the record first before we go out and tour with it. And we have a tour booked in Europe for early January. Fingers crossed that we'll be able to go ahead as planned. And that will be just about like 3 months after the album release. That's perfect because it's a heavy, intricate record. You need some time to digest it properly, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wouldn't have wanted to tour in September anyways, you know. So I think it's all, again, it's fallen into place somehow as we wanted it. And the other thing that a lot of people and a lot of labels who have been postponing releases have not really seemed to consider is the fact that, well, nobody seems to be thinking about that time period in 2021 that everyone is postponing into. It's going to be a total clusterfuck of tours and artists and bands all wanting to release records and tour around the same time. It's going to be busier than ever this spring, and it's already usually really, really busy with tours and everything. And next year is just going to be crazy. And I don't think we would have done ourselves a favor by postponing into this period when, there's just this huge pile of tours and releases that haven't happened this year that all need to come out then. So that was also part of the consideration that we said, fuck it, let's just release it now, and and then we're done with it, and we don't have to deal with that next year when everybody's going to be hustling to release and tour, you know. So obviously we're going to be part of the touring thing, but at least the album's already out then.
No, I actually like that logic. I mean, it gives people time to absorb the record and to really think about it, but it's still fresh enough in their minds when you go out on tour.
Exactly. It wouldn't work if it's like a year or something. I think the bands that were really fucked were the ones releasing in like March, April this year,
mm-hmm.
And then not being able to tour until like a year after that. That's not ideal. But I mean, we also had to think about it regarding Pelagic Records releases. You know, we did have releases in the spring, and there was a difficult, tough call to make. Like, obviously the bands want their records out, but at the same time, nobody knew at that point how long this was going to carry on, and you know, it was really difficult to make the right decisions there. And I think September is close enough to the time when tours will become possible again, so it's kind of a good compromise between the shitty options we have.
Do you think that any of these albums' themes are made more relevant in these turbulent times?
Well, we don't have a particularly virus-related topic like Haken.
Yeah.
I think that record really...
That's definitely hitting the nail on the head right there.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a little bit less... relevant in our case. But I don't know, like the record was recorded and finished before all of this happened, before anyone could ever have thought anything like this could happen. So I don't want to claim now that there was any thought behind it when there was not. Like the music was written and recorded at a time before COVID-19, and yeah, it's bizarre now, but when you think back just like 6-7 months time, nobody could have thought that the world would change within a matter of a couple of weeks into a place like it is now, that nobody would have been able to imagine that. So it's crazy times indeed.
Absolutely. I even remember back in March, first week of March, I was talking to the guys from Cult of Luna and Intronaut here in Toronto at the Opera House, which a vibrant neighborhood, a lot of nice bars nearby. A week later, I came back to the same neighborhood and everything was closed down because we had declared an emergency in Canada.
Yeah, crazy. How was that show and that tour?
Oh, it was amazing. Absolutely incredible. I had never seen Cult of Luna live. It was a life-changing experience. It was incredible.
It's a sight to behold on stage, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Jonas Renske of Catatonia, I think I'm not pronouncing that name correctly, my apologies. But he appears on the latest single, Jurassic Cretaceous, and was also featured on a song from the previous record. How did he become involved with this project?
I've been talking to Jonas for a long time. Actually, the first time I talked to him was back in 2006, I think, when we were in the studio recording Precambrian, and they were in the studio recording The Great Cold Distance. And I reached out to him back then, and he was into the idea of collaborating and providing guest vocals on Precambrian, but it didn't happen simply for timing reasons. And then 3 years ago, we played with Catatonia in Romania, a one-off show. They actually invited us to play with them for the Great Cold Distance anniversary show, and then we started talking again, and we revisited the idea to do something together, and that's how the Phanerozoic 1 collaboration on the track Devonian happened. And it wasn't really a plan to have him on the second part of the record, because all the vocals were already written and we just weren't really thinking about it. But then what happened was that Peter, our synth guy, totally changed a part of the song. And so the guitars and vocals that we had already recorded with Loic, they didn't work anymore over the new synths, but we all loved those synths. It was like really, really cool. And so someone was saying, all right, let's just send it to Jonas, because we were on tour with Leprous at that time, so we couldn't just go into the studio and re-record stuff. So someone said, just send it to Jonas, see what he thinks, and that's what we did. And he got back to us 3 days later with his version of vocals over that new part, and it worked really, really well. And so that's how we ended up on the second record too.
Wonderful. I mean, it's an incredible song. I've been listening to it a couple times now, as well as revisiting the first Phanerozoic.
Right. Thanks, man.
No problem. I love listening to you guys. I mean, I remember even when Pelagial came out, and that was probably one of the first albums that really exposed me to like progressive metal. Because at that time, I didn't really even know much about Mastodon, Dream Theater, Opeth, let alone a band like The Ocean.
Right.
And
yeah, that's cool. That's good to hear. That record was for us always a pleasure to play live, and I think we're going to go back to that at one point. But we got really tired of it because we toured on it so much, and we always played the whole record in its entirety from the beginning to the end. That was kind of part of the deal. Mm-hmm. And while that worked really, really well, we just got to the point where we were like, oh, fuck, we really need to do something new now. So it's good to play some fresh material now, and but I think we will definitely revisit that record at one point.
Starting with Pelagial, your albums have been accompanied by instrumental versions. Do you feel these alternate versions of the album offer a different experience, thematically or otherwise, in comparison to the regular albums?
Definitely a different experience, definitely. thematically, I'm not so sure. I mean, you just take away the whole conceptual aspect and the lyrics, but if you take away the vocals, what happens is that there is a lot more attention on the actual music, and you will realize things that you wouldn't be realizing if you were only listening to the vocal version. Mm-hmm. And that is not just true for musicians, but for everyone. We're so conditioned to pay attention to vocals, and especially lead vocals, that everything else kind of just like gets drowned out behind it. And that's why we like to offer instrumental versions, because they really do offer this different perspective on the same thing, essentially. But with Phanerozoic 1 and 2, we also started approaching the mixes of the instrumental versions differently. So for Pelagial, it was more of a case where we just muted the vocals. On Phanerozoic 1, on Devonian, for example, the track with Jonas, we brought in a cello that is not on the vocal version because it was kind of conflicting with his vocals. Not in a harmonic way, but it was just getting too much. Mm-hmm. So on the instrumental version, we brought it back in because then it worked out really well. And the same thing happened on Phanerozoic 2 with the opening track, Triassic. We recorded some flutes for that track in Armenia. It has a bit of an oriental vibe. And we toured Armenia and Georgia last year, and we met this traditional woodwinds and flutes player, an amazing guy. And he recorded some parts for that song, and they also were kind of clashing with the vocals. So they didn't make it onto the vocal version, but we did bring them back in on the instrumental version. And there's also some synths that are quite a lot louder, and it's just a different mix altogether. So you will hear things on the instrumental version that you won't hear on the vocal version. And personally, I listen to a lot of different music, but a big part of it is instrumental music. Mm-hmm. And I really like it myself, and I love to have that option. I would even with bands where I really do like the vocals, I would always love it if there was an instrumental version available, you know? Not because I don't like the singers, but just because it gives you that different perspective.
Absolutely.
And so that's why we started doing that, and I think we're going to stick to that for the future as well.
There are so many bands that can be so expressive and can tell beautiful stories without ever having to say a thing. And I would say that The Ocean I would say that your band is certainly one of them. I mean, and if I'm not mistaken, Pelagial was written originally as an instrumental album, yes?
That's right. Yep. The vocals were added very late in the process, and they really are an add-on to that record that was initially planned to be fully instrumental. Yeah. So it's been like that with us for the past couple of records. The vocals are always the last step in the chain of songwriting, and they always get added over songs that are already kind of finished as instrumental versions and that work as standalone instrumentals. The vocals do transform them and bring them to a different level when they happen, but at the same time, the songs also always work as instrumentals, I think.
Speaking of Pelagial again, I've at the end of the last decade, I did a video about the best albums of the last decade, and almost everyone who commented said that Pelagial was one of the best albums of the last decade, possibly of all time. How do you respond to that?
Well, I'm humbly thankful. That record did receive a lot of good feedback, and it somehow seems like that happened not instantly when the record was released, but a little bit later. It was a record that took a bit more time to be fully digested, I think, until most people really got it. But looking back at it now, it's got a really, really good responses from all across the globe, and I'm very happy about that. Like I said, I really still like the record. I always loved playing it live. It was a very challenging record to write because it's basically just like one long piece of music, and it was written in this consecutive way, like starting with the first moment and then all the way to the end. And it's the only record that we did like that in order to get that progression of from the surface into the depths of the sea. You know, we wanted the music to get more claustrophobic and lower in tuning and slower and heavier towards the end of the record. And everything was written with that in mind to make that curve, the downward curve, kind of like happen, you know. And that was really difficult, and there were some moments where I was really hating my life, but I think altogether it worked out pretty well, and people still love that record.
I think it maybe worked out best that it wasn't immediately popular, because it just proves that over time people really began to sink their teeth into the record, and it wasn't just, oh,
Yeah,
this is a
exactly.
cool riff, a cool melody. People really absorbed it and learned about it and researched it.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. I
And
think it's really good that, like, those are the records that usually stick. It's not the ones that you listen to and you instantly fall in love with them. It's the ones that you find interesting, but you feel like you need to go back there to fully be able to grasp it, you know? And
mhm.
for me personally, those type of records were always the ones that I found most interesting.
Absolutely as well. I mean, there are some albums I come back to time and time again. I'm still finding new things about them. I've always used Obscura from Gorguts as a great example. A lot of old,
Yeah,
like, King Crimson,
great
Pink
record.
Floyd, Yes, a lot of stuff like
Yeah,
that. Even some of the Mastodon stuff as well. And it just,
yeah,
as much
yeah.
as I love Judas Priest, Guns N' Roses, Ozzy Osbourne, it's the more progressive stuff that I come back to, because there's always something new and exciting to find there.
Right. Yeah, same for me.
Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
This last question comes from a fan, Matthew McDonald. Years ago, during another interview, you were asked if you were worried that the Ocean's themes and music were too nerdy, to which you apparently replied, I don't think metal is nerdy enough. How do you feel about the current level of nerdiness within heavy metal? Is it appropriately nerdy?
I think it's quite appropriately nerdy. Yes, nerdism has become more accepted in the metal world. I think
I
there's a
would
lot of
agree with
bands.
that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of bands releasing really nerdy records and nerdy concept albums, and I think that's beautiful. I mean, it's not the only thing I like in metal, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt drawn towards people who have a passion for something, and whether it's collecting butterflies or heavy metal, it doesn't matter in the end. You know, it's like the burning desire and the drive to get deeply into something that I've always felt very attracted to. And yeah, it's charming if people do that, if people investigate and you know, develop a story to tell, or find something that they really care about, and like weave that into the fabric of their music. I really like that.
And I think that there's a
All
lot of
hail the
different.
nerds of the
Absolutely.
world.
There's a lot of different types of nerdiness in heavy metal now too. I mean, you've got Karach and Gren, who are telling, like, basically fairy tales through their music, and classic horror stories, and then you've got
Yeah,
Haken, who are super complicated, and Intronaut fall into that as well, and then you've got Ailstorm, who are just like, we're pirates, and we're goofy, and we drink and we scream. Like, metal
yeah.
metal now is probably the nerdiest genre on the planet, I would say. Personally, I think so.
I agree, and even the traditional, like the whole Viking metal thing, you know, it's like it's super nerdy.
Oh,
Aim in the
super
Mars
nerdy.
having a Viking boat on stage. I mean, how nerdy can you get?
Absolute. Amon Amarth is one of the nerdiest
Yeah,
bands I've ever seen, which is weird because they have this
exactly.
image of being like, we're tough, muscular dudes, and
Yeah,
but it's
no,
so
they're
nerdy.
super nerds.
It's like I'm watching the Viking show on TV or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, totally.
I think I saw them back in. It almost feels weird to think about stuff before COVID-19, but I remember seeing them in October, and their stage was just a giant Viking helmet, and everyone in the crowd was wearing kilts, and they had drinking horns, and it smelled like beer the whole
Yeah,
night.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's nerdiness. Embrace being nerdy.
It's exactly. I completely agree. And I think most of the people in the metal world actually do. Even the tough guys, you know, even the ones
Oh
kind of
yeah,
like inclined to paint a different picture of themselves. I think we're all nerds, and I think that's a beautiful thing, essentially.
absolutely. Well, that's all the time I've got for you today. Or thank you very much. Sorry for technical difficulties. I'm pretty sure that was on my end. If it makes you feel better.
No worries at all. We made it work.
And anything else to say to the fine folks out there about the new album, or what to expect from Ocean in the future?
Well, we're definitely planning to come back to North America. We were actually supposed to tour North America with Haken this summer in August, and that tour was also a victim of COVID-19, so it didn't happen. But we're definitely planning to get back over there next year as soon as it will be possible again. We will definitely do an extended U.S. and Canada tour. Can't wait to get back to. You're from Toronto, right?
That is correct.
Toronto and Montreal, we've always had great shows there, but the last one was already like 5 or 6 years ago. I think it must have been like it was 2013, I think, was the last full US tour we did, where we played Montreal and Toronto. So it's been way too long.
Would that have been the Summer Slaughter tour then? Because I believe you guys played on that.
I think so. Yeah.
With the Dillinger Escape Plan and Animals as Leaders and stuff.
Exactly, that tour, yeah. And after that, we were supposed to tour with Intronaut in 2014 or 2015, but that tour we had to cancel because we didn't get visas in time, because there was some extra checks and processing. It took a lot longer than it normally did, and we had to pull out 10 days before the tour because we still didn't have visas, and it was completely unclear whether we would get them in time. And in the end, we only got them 2/3 into the tour, so it wouldn't have worked out. And after that, we never came back. We released Pelagial in 2013, and then we did a lot of tours all across the globe, but didn't really come back to the States and to Canada. So yeah, it's something I'm really looking forward to. I've always loved touring there, and it's definitely happening next year.
If I may speak on behalf of Toronto, I promise a damn good triumphant return. I promise a big party for y'all when you show up.
Awesome. Sounds good. We're up for it.
Well, thank you again for your time. Looking forward to the new album, and you have yourself a great day.
Excellent. You too. Thanks, man.
No problem. And there you have it, folks. Once again, that was Robin Staps, lead guitarist for the German progressive metal band The Ocean. Unfortunately, we had to cut that interview a little bit short because I was on a little bit of a strict timeline, and on top of that, I had to deal with some technical difficulties halfway through, so apologies to that. Thank you to Robin for his time. Thank you for being patient with me as I sorted everything out. We still got some good juicy tidbits out of you, so I'm personally more than satisfied. If you are as well, like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, folks, you have yourselves a fantastic fucking day.